Camille walked into the first-class lounge at JFK with nothing but a boarding pass and quiet confidence. Minutes later, she was being escorted out not for anything she did, but because of who she was. What the airline didn't realize was that she held the power to cost them $5 billion. Yeah, that happened. This is the story they'll never forget. Let me back up a sec. Camille Hartley wasn't some flashy socialite flaunting designer labels or dripping in diamonds. No, she had on a tailored navy coat, sleek pumps, and carried just a slim laptop bag and a printed boarding pass. She walked in like she belonged, which she did because she was the CEO of a major financial firm, poised to negotiate a billion-dollar deal with the airline. But as soon as she crossed the threshold, the whole room shifted. The soft glow of gold-trimmed fixtures and plush leather chairs suddenly felt colder. The murmurs hushed, and eyes flickered between suspicion and curiosity. You could almost hear the unspoken question hanging in the air. Who does she think she is, sitting here among the elite? Camille didn't respond with drama or protest. Instead, she offered a polite nod to the concierge and scanned her first-class boarding pass seat 1A, priority lounge access. Everything was in order. Yet the attendant hesitated, fingers lingering over the screen like his mind was battling an invisible rule. If you look different, you must explain yourself. She settled into one of the best seats, pulling up financial documents for an upcoming critical meeting with the airline's leadership. Just days earlier, her firm had proposed a $5 billion investment to steer the struggling carrier toward stability and change. But this afternoon's meeting wasn't starting as expected. Instead of handshake greetings, the room was thick with an unspoken storm. Whispers followed her glance. Cameras subtly tracked her every move. The luxury lounge felt more like a courtroom. Then came the moment. A sharply dressed man in black approached. "Excuse me, ma'am. Could you please come with me?" The weight of those words hit her like a gavel dropping. Calm but firm, Camille closed her laptop and followed. The man was Dustin Shaw, a senior security agent, and though he had no real Casino suspicious items, no alert sheet was executing a silent protocol born of bias. If you look different, you must be questioned. They moved to a small, sterile security holding room with beige walls and cold metal surfaces, the kind of place designed to intimidate without a word spoken. More agents joined. The air grew heavier. Deborah Lynch, the head of security, entered, her posture strict, eyes sharp, radio clicking with authority. "Ms. Hartley, we need to conduct a brief security check," she said. Polite, but the message was clear. You don't belong here. Camille had already shown her documents and tickets, but protocol was just a veil. She sat calmly, hands folded, embodying a quiet defiance taught by her grandparents, a preacher and a teacher who believed dignity was the greatest form of resistance. Around her, the lounge turned into a ring of silent spectators, the tension palpable despite the background hum of flight announcements and idle chatter. She wasn't just facing scrutiny, she was facing an invisible wall of prejudice. What they didn't know was that Camille was prepared. Hidden inside her bag was her phone loaded with an app that could instantly alert her legal team, record misconduct, and notify her firm's executives. She was ready not for confrontation, but for truth. Inside that cold room, the questions began: name, destination, purpose. The monotone voice of the officer was edged with disbelief, as if a woman like her simply shouldn't have a first-class ticket. When asked how she obtained the seat, Camille replied plainly, "I booked it, like anyone else with money and reason." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, their search for a flaw coming up empty. Then came a twist of familiar name appeared on the flight manifest. Colton Graves, the airline's OO, a man Camille had met before, a man who once belittled her by asking if she was just an assistant. The memory stung, and suddenly the scene felt less random, more staged. Was this an orchestrated performance to shame her? Deborah Lynch returned with loaded questions about Camille's affiliations, implying her presence was suspicious. Camille leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You call my composure suspicious, my silence threatening, and hide behind routine check like it's an excuse." The room froze. The security chief's jaw clenched, but the officers were told to release her. Camille's calm remained unbroken as she activated her recording app, every word, every exchange preserved. Back at the gate, the atmosphere shifted. No applause greeted her return, no apologies, but all eyes were on her. Camille walked with regal silence, shoulders squared, eyes steady. When her boarding group was finally called, she held her pass high, looked the attendant in the eye, and said clearly, "Seat 1A." She boarded without a glance back, knowing the real fight was just beginning. What they missed was the storm Camille was quietly unleashing. From her seat aboard the plane, she pulled out a tablet and began a meticulous audit, logging every moment of discrimination, every whispered judgment, every dismissive glance. This wasn't personal vendetta, it was systemic exposure. Her firm's $5 billion investment hinged on ethical standards, and this incident triggered a clause allowing them to halt funding in cases of misconduct. As the flight cruised towards Seattle, Camille recorded a message, a formal internal analysis highlighting the breach of customer dignity and systemic bias. Her eyes met those of a passenger, Niarbi, a woman who had once stared her down, now avoided her gaze altogether. The quiet power of documentation was unfolding. Upon landing, Camille was met not by hostility, but by a corporate escort, someone sent to manage the fallout. Their conversation was brief, but revealing. "We're looking into what happened," they said. Camille shook her head. "No, you're not. You're already under investigation, and you should take it seriously." Her words cut through the corporate veneer like a scalpel. In a sleek, closed-door meeting, Camille faced the airline's top brass: General Counsel, VP of Operations, Security Chief, and PR Advisor. No introductions, no pleasantries, just the weight of consequence. She laid out the evidence: high-resolution video, audio, timestamps, faces proof of the discriminatory treatment. She advised immediate suspension of those involved, a halt on PR spin, and preparation for audits that could threaten the airline's certification and finances. The PR advisor tried to negotiate damage control. Camille held up a hand. "This isn't about optics. This is about culture, about how your system treats people like me, quiet, qualified, black. What happened wasn't a glitch. It was a feature, and I'm here to rewrite that code." The room fell into stunned silence. Titles, power, money, all meaningless now. Camille Hartley wasn't a passenger anymore. She was the judge, the evaluator, and the enforcer of justice. She could have walked away, swallowed the humiliation, and filed a complaint later. But she chose to stay, to witness, and to demand accountability. Her words lingered as she left. "You'll receive the official findings within 72 hours. Your future depends on how sincerely you act." The fallout was swift. News spread beyond PR filters, reaching regulators, investors, and media. The $5 billion investment was frozen pending review. Within 24 hours, Deborah Lynch was escorted out. The flight attendant who humiliated Camille was reassigned and put under investigation. The message was clear: complicity was no longer safe. Camille watched quietly from her office overlooking Lake Washington. There was no celebration, only the weight of knowing this fight was bigger than her. When asked to speak publicly, she declined, saying, "Let the silence of their empty gates speak louder." Passengers canceled flights. Industry watchdogs called for audits. The airline's brand was forever stained. But the most profound change was within Camille herself. She hadn't become someone no armor, no bitterness, just a woman embodying strength through dignity and clarity. Weeks later, she returned to that same lounge. The energy was different. Employees nodded respectfully. Bias training had evolved. Policies shifted toward equity. A young agent greeted her with quiet reverence. "Welcome back, MS. Hartley." She nodded and walked on. No grand gestures needed. Before boarding her next flight, Camille paused outside the gate, not to relive the past, but to acknowledge the truth unlocked that day. This wasn't just about $5 billion. It was about the unseen cost of bias, the price of arrogance, and the quiet power of resilience. For the airline, the scandal marked a reckoning. For the world watching, It was a lesson. Never mistake silence for weakness, and never let quiet confidence be taken as permission. Camille Hartley didn't walk into that airport just to catch a flight. She walked in to change the altitude of justice. And she left not as a passenger, but as a compass pointing the way toward a new era. So, what do we take from Camille's story? That discrimination often wears a polished uniform, whispers through policies, and hides behind routine checks. That dismantling, it doesn't always require rage. It takes patience, documentation, and a refusal to be silenced. And most importantly, how we treat others reveals more about ourselves than them. Whether you hold power or simply bear witness, your response to injustice shapes the world. If you've ever been looked down on, dismissed, or underestimated, let Camille remind you. No one has the right to tell you where you don't belong. You define your worth, and if you hold on to that, no system, no bias, no gatekeeper can take it from you. In a world where division makes the loudest noise, Camille's quiet rebellion calls for clarity, for action rooted in honor, not vengeance. If the story moved you, challenged you, or opened your eyes, share it. Let it echo in boardrooms, classrooms, lounges, and homes. And if you believe more stories like this need to be told raw, powerful, and human, subscribe and join the conversation. Because change begins when we listen, when we speak, and when justice rises. What's your take? Where do you see bias hiding in plain sight? And how do you think we can rewrite the rules for good? Let's keep this conversation going.